Ladies and gentlemen, World Economic Forum Global Leader of Tomorrow, Taddy Blecher.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Great.
In 2005, you said, I quote, "Education is about wisdom. It's not just content, but also discipline, love, caring, and support." Why do you think so?
Let me explain that right now.
Okay, let's go for
I
it.
will
Taddy.
do. Thank you. I'm going to tell you about an incredible breakthrough that is very recent. I was inspired by Anita's talk. I'm going to talk about human mothers giving birth to AI babies, little robots that they bring up to grow and be successful in the world. No, I'm joking. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about human mothers giving birth to human babies and how to bring them up to be successful. How many people in the audience have got a child of your own? If you have a child, let's see, a lot. How many have got children who are under 10? A lot. No wonder you look so tired. I'm just joking. So please forgive us if you don't have a child, because I'll be talking a lot to people with children or people intending having children. I'm not talking to the children up there about having children, so I don't want to inspire them. But we all know, if we've got children, that either it's the thing that makes you happiest in the world, or the children can drive you crazy. I want you to think back to that night when your first child was born, and when they came home and they were lying in bed next to you. And remember that feeling of peace in the room, like something holy has just happened, that little baby next to you. And you're lying there thinking, what do I have to do so that my child can grow up as a great person? Or you're thinking, what if things go wrong for my child and they grow up and they don't love themselves, they don't think they're good enough, they think they're too fat, they're too thin, they're not smart enough, etc. Just remember that night when your child was first born. So I thought about pulling together 20 principles that are going to come from 4 different fields about what great parenting might look like in this exponential era that we're in and increasingly going into. We all want our children to be successful. Every one of us. We want our children to get through school, to go on and do awesome things as adults. But how? So a lot of parents are getting worried. And I think we each know people, maybe if we're thinking about often young boys, like 12, 13, 14, they get into gaming. Somehow they seem to get lost in the cyber world. Or kids come home from school and they say, I'm bored at school. I don't want to go to school anymore. I can just on my phone, on Google, in 10 minutes, I can learn what I learned the whole day in school from my teacher. Or maybe you're worried that your child is spoiled. And I see in Czech Republic that on average, mothers in the country have 1.41 babies. So it's less than the replacement rate of 2.1. And so you might find that children are just growing up more spoiled, that they have everything they need and more. And maybe this is something that you worry about as a parent. And also we see a lot of children have got so much pressure at school, even from a young age, so much homework, coming home, there's never-ending things that they have to be doing, going for classes, extra lessons, this and that. Children are getting so stressed. Or we find kids with ADD, ADHD, learning disorders, early childhood depression, etc. Maybe you just feel your child has a bad attitude. So these are some of the principles I wanted to pull together for parents and future parents, just to think about how to be a good parent. So this is my own family. That is my Canadian wife, who is right now in South Africa. And right now, at this moment, she's saying, why the hell am I in Czech Republic doing a talk about parenting, and I'm not at home with her looking after these 2 kids? So, and this is my son on the left there. You can see him. I think he's going to be an entrepreneur. He's 4 years old. And that's another way of saying he's an extremely naughty little bugger. But girls are very easy. And you can see my daughter there. She's 9 months. And it's wonderful having a daughter. I've spent 25 years in doing research on children and on education, on the front lines, working to educate kids. And what I've learned is there are some basic human principles about good parenting and bringing up young people to be successful as human beings. And one of the things I've learned is that believing in your own children is one of the greatest gifts that you can give to them. Because even when somebody doesn't believe in themselves, but if somebody they love, particularly their parent, believes in them, then this is going to totally change how they grow up in their lives. Also, there are thousands, literally countless scientific studies on what does good parenting look like and what is advice for parents on how to bring up your children successfully. And I'm going to draw on many of these research studies. I could spend a whole day or many days telling you about this. But what I want to say is it's not rocket science. There's nothing I'm going to tell you about any of these principles of good parenting that is going to shock you. These things are in our DNA. The problem is, are we losing these principles? Are we so obsessed with thinking about technology, that it's going to take away all our problems, etc., that we're going to try and outsource parenting, and this is where we're going to lose it. So these principles are not rocket science. And much of it comes down to the parents and what we can all do as parents. So what can brain science teach us? And we know there's huge growing research on the brain, and the answer is a lot. And what brain science teaches us, which I'll try to share in a short period of time, is firstly that the brain is not a static thing. A human brain is really a river. It's like a river flowing that can change its course and so on. The brain is not a rock. It's not a fixed thing that stays static. Every single experience changes the brain. So if you want to be a good parent, you have to try also think about what experiences are my child going to be exposed to the whole time. So when a child is young, literally the first 3 years of life is mostly what colors that child for their whole life. What happens, how their brain gets formed in the first 3 years is going to affect their whole life. That's the most formative time. And then, of course, the first 7 years, very formative. But the brain, the good news is the brain can still change and grow right throughout life. So our human brain has an amazing ability to adapt and change. Now, why is this important as a parent? It's important because what you see, you become. What you hear, you become. What you smell, you become. So if a child is being exposed all the time to things that are good for it, you take your child into nature to see beauty, inspirational things, its heart feels expanded, this is going to develop the child in a beautiful way. What is going to happen if you allow your child all day, every day, to be exposed to very violent games, either in VR or on some form of computer or technology? What do you think is going to happen to your child? Day in, day out, this is going to form certain connections in the brain. That is fact. So it's very important as parents that we have to create a happy, healthy, and safe space for our children. And we do watch what we expose them to. And what is research showing as well is that it's important for parents, especially when children are younger, to mediate the experience that their children are having with technology. So what does that mean? Participate in tech-based activities with them. So maybe that might be that you engage in coding with your kids. It might be that you play a game with them online. But please don't outsource parenting to technology. And if you leave your child alone in the cyber world on their own, maybe some not so good things will happen. Children, they need your love. They need your guidance. They need wisdom. They need boundaries. They have to be taught how to practice moderation. Otherwise, they're just going to go and go and go and never to stop. To have a healthy brain, all of us, just like us as parents, our children also need exercise. They need to get out into nature. They need sports, healthy lifestyle, gets blood to the brain. But again, we can use technology to challenge our children, to have fun as a family. Things like an Apple Watch, a Fitbit, any of these things can actually make exercise more fun. So when we're thinking about parenting and we're thinking about what are the skills we have to bring our kids up to, this is a list from the World Economic Forum. I'm sure you've seen this before, where they talk about the future of work. I'm going to talk about this tomorrow more. Complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity. We want children to grow up with these things. People management, how to interact with people. So I don't want to spend time on this. What I want to spend time on is this next quote that comes from the World Economic Forum that I believe is brilliant. It is brilliant advice for all of us in a technological era, in an exponential era, when we're thinking about bringing up our children. So what WEF says is we are washed today with visions of the university of the future. Everyone's going to have this cloud-based robotic tutor on a tablet which will curate everything we need to know. 6-week coding academies are all we will require. The world of education will be all digital and individualized, allowing you to learn from your laptop anywhere on demand. Now, here's the important sentence. This is what we think is going to happen. And yes, we will have robotic tutors. All these things will come true. But they say there's just one problem with these visions. They miss the mark on what students are going to need to learn to succeed. Because every one of these things here, complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, is not easy to learn alone or online or without effort. They take practice. They demand rich human interactions. We learn to be complex thinkers, to manage relationships, to be emotionally intelligent by practicing these skills with others. So this is important. And what does it tell us? It tells us we need balance. And what I'm going to show you is technology can really develop the brain. It can really do incredible things for children. But at the same time, we cannot lose our humanness. Okay? And the basic things that we've learned for hundreds and thousands of years in bringing up children. So how are we going to develop these skills? And if you could think about a bird flying in the air, a bird can only fly with 2 wings. If a bird has only 1 wing, it cannot fly. And when it comes to parenting, these wings are 2 things. The one is love, the other one is discipline. If a child has only love and no discipline, the results actually, and there's a lot of research on this, are not good. If a child has only discipline and no love, I'm going to show you what the results are. And there are many, many studies, and it's not a pretty picture. So a child needs both these things together. They need love, they need boundaries, and they need discipline. This is a beautiful book. I want to start with talking about this issue of love and why love is so important. It's called Why Love Matters, How Affection Changes a Baby's Brain. You know, there's research that shows how love literally, from the mother and father, literally develops these neuronal pathways in the brain, long before a child can even speak. Just the love of the mother. If you put a premature baby in an incubator and nobody talks or strokes or touches that baby's growth will be stunted by 6 weeks compared to if you put that baby in an incubator and every day there are people loving and stroking and touching that baby. Babies know what love is. Human beings know what that is. These pathways literally form in the brain if you give love to a child. So, for example, studies have been done on criminals who've murdered people, etc. And they say, how could this person have killed somebody in cold blood? They shot them straight in the head. How could that be possible? And often they found that this child maybe grew up with no loving environment. Maybe they weren't with parents, etc. And those pathways in the brain literally didn't get formed. And so when a person can shoot someone in cold blood, it is literally in cold blood. There is no feeling. So love is extremely, extremely important. So if you've got young children, don't hold back on your affection, playing with them, baby talk, loving them. Now this is very, very interesting, is that the longest study on human beings ever done is a study that has taken place over 80 years. It's a Harvard study. It's called the Grant Study. And it looked at young men, 17 years upwards, studying at Harvard, many hundreds of them, from the year 1939 up to the year 1945. And it's tracked these men now for 80 years. Some of them, many of them are now passed away. Some of them are in their 90s now. But what did it find? It's the longest study ever done on what is going to bring success in terms of parenting and how you bring up young people. And let me tell you what they found, and it's amazing. They found that if a child has a warm relationship with their mother, okay, a very warm relationship, that child is more likely, on average, they will earn $87,000 more per year than if you are the child of an uncaring mother. This is the power of love, okay? They find that men who did not get enough support or love from their mothers when they were very young are far more, exponentially more likely to develop dementia or mental disease when they're older than children who had that kind of support when they were young. But don't think it's only about love from the mother. I'm not letting fathers off the hook, because love from a father at a very young age, what they find, men grow up, women grow up with lower levels of adult anxiety. They're better able to hold down a job, increased life satisfaction even at age 75. So this is a very interesting finding from the longest study that has ever been done on human beings. Quality time with your kids, that is something that we know. Now there's a very interesting thing I'm going to say from the study on spending time with your kids. This is quality time. Quality time with your kids is not when your phone is on and you're texting, or you answering work emails, or your iPad is on, or something like that. Quality time is focused quality time. But the good news is it doesn't have to be that long. Even just 20, 30 minutes a day of quality time from a parent will change how a child grows up. Whereas, if too much time is spent with a child and never letting the child just play by themselves and also learn about deep work and get engaged, maybe building a Lego puzzle or something like that, always hovering around the child, that's also going to be problematic, and research has shown that. So this is one of the most important things about proper parenting, is listening. And listening is an art that many of us haven't developed, especially if we are very successful maybe in the business world, etc. We like to tell everybody what to do, etc. And yet we know that in a marriage you cannot tell your wife what to do. Okay? And in fact, it's not even that you have to solve somebody's problem. You don't have to solve your wife's problem, but what you have to do is you have to listen. You have to validate. It's the same thing for children, because this, listening, leads to trust. And without trust, you will never have your child confiding in you when they're going through difficult times in their life. So if you want your child to be talking to you about sexual issues that they're going through, things that are going on, substances that are coming at school, any kind of issues that are going on, your child has to have tremendous trust. And this starts from listening to them at a very young age. And I want to give 2 tips on listening. The first one is when a child is very young. You are like a high mountain and your child is down here like a toddler. It's important to go down to their level and to look them in the eye and to listen to them. And at the same time, especially for young boys, it's important to talk to them about difficult issues when it's not crisis time. Because usually they're going to talk to you afterwards and they're going to test, are you listening? Are you listening to them, what they thought about, etc.? And you need to pre-think what you are going to say to your child in these difficult situations. Another book I would highly recommend, How to Talk So Your Kids Will Listen, and Listen So Your Kids Will Talk. And listening is something we all have to develop. Now, a study that came out in the 1960s, another Harvard study, very, very interesting. I'm talking about the discipline side now. We've spoken a lot about love. Now, here's the other wing of the bird, that if you don't have discipline, it is going to be very problematic. So the study, which started in the 1960s, it basically categorizes 3 styles of bringing up a child. The first one is permissive. You just let your child do anything. My child wants to put his hands in the fire. I must let him have freedom of choice and think for himself. Then he'll get burnt and he won't do it again. I'm going to just let my child run across the road. I'm going to let my child do anything. That's permissive parenting. Then we have authoritarian parenting, where I will tell you what to do. You are my child. I'm going to tell you what to do because I know. And then we have authoritative parenting. And what this is guiding the child, but the parent teaches the child rationally and gives reasons for things. The reason we don't put our hand in the fire is because of such and such. And we start to teach. And what research shows, and this is research now over 50 years, is this kind of parenting is going to teach children independent thinking. So it is far better to be authoritative than it is to be authoritarian or permissive. Now, this is a nice and interesting one. And especially in a country like this, is we need to allow our children to do chores at home. They need to do things. We need to keep them busy. They must do housework, maybe taking out the garbage, doing things like that. Why is it important? And again, research has been done on this. You know, if you want to pick up a 300-pound weight, if you just do it with no practice, no exercise, you're going to break your muscles. But if you build up, you are going to teach children discipline and grit if they start off doing chores at home and having work to do. Now, a lot of parents think, when I was young, I had it tough. Things were so hard. I want my children to have everything, to never struggle like I struggled. That actually is not necessarily a good thing, okay? Because life has got struggle in it. You can't just wear kid gloves with your children. Children have to know sometimes things are tough. They have to learn how to solve problems on their own. So even small things, like maybe you carry your little baby around everywhere. You don't let them walk, and you're going on a walk, and you keep picking them up. You also have to have your child learning that I can do things for myself. It's a very important concept, grit. And they find that children who grow up and are going to be very successful in their lives, they are taught this thing that if I commit to something and I don't give up, that is going to be the secret of my success. So it's about teaching kids to imagine and commit to a future that they want to create and not give up. So what do good parents do? And this is, again, very interesting research. They value effort. Now, everybody sitting in the room here is brilliant. You are all so successful. You are leaders of the Czech Republic. Chances are your children are brilliant. But if every day, and this is what research shows, is every day your child does something great, they come top in their class for maths, and you just say, you're so brilliant. You've got such a great brain. You're actually doing your child a disservice. Okay? Because you need to be teaching your child that it is the effort that they put in that got them to be top of their class that matters. Okay? It's more important than teaching them to avoid failure or even the fact that they were successful. So research has shown is parents need to teach their kids where success comes from. And then kids will model that. So if you teach your kids that effort brings success, and you did well in your maths test because you worked so hard, that is much more important than telling your child you did well in the maths test because you're brilliant. In fact, that actually is going to cause harm. The best predictor of a child's success is their parent believing that they are going to be successful. So if you have high expectations for your kids and you share that with your kids, this is going to be the biggest predictor of success for them. And there's a US study done on 6,500 kids showing this point. Are you aware that if you read to a child who's between 0 and 1 years old, even when your baby is not yet born in its mother's tummy, it is already able to pick up language. If you read to a child just 20 minutes every week between 0 and 1, there's a 90% likelihood that child will go to university. Just that you read 20 minutes between they were 0 and 1. Daily routine is very important for children, especially up to age 7. This is what research finds. If you create just these daily boundaries, this is how children get safety. So again, it's just putting that daily discipline. You must go to sleep on time. It's very important to sleep on time. It's important to get enough sleep. Now, in this age of devices, we know that if kids are staying up late on a device, the blue light affects the circadian rhythms. Often, they struggle to sleep. Poor quality sleep is going to lead to lack of proper development of the brain. So we have to teach our kids. Hard work doesn't necessarily mean going without sleep. Okay, sleep is extremely important to develop the brain. Also, darken a room. As dark as a room can be that a child can be happy to sleep, the better the quality of sleep. It's a beautiful book we've used with our kids. My mom used this with us from the 1960s, How to Give Your Child a Superior Mind. But it all starts early. Now I'm going to talk about just 2 tips for mothers. The first one, often mothers think, you know, my husband's successful, I don't need to work, and I'm just going to stay at home, and I don't need to study more. But actually research shows the opposite, that if mothers get well educated, it is far more likely that their children will become well educated. And so a study of 14,000 students, 14,000 children from the University of Michigan showed exactly this. Other studies would show if a mother gets educated, 7 generations that follow will get educated. So if you want to inspire your children, it's good to get educated. And mothers should work. At some point, this is a very interesting Harvard Business School study there's significant benefits for mothers to actually work. Now, this might be counterintuitive because we think if the mother just stays at home only to look after her children, in fact, daughters of working mothers are far more likely to stay in school longer, to hold down a good job in a supervisory role, and are likely to earn 23% more in their careers than children of stay-at-home mothers. Now, here's a difficult one for mothers and fathers, for all of us. We live in a very, very stressful world. There's research that shows something called emotional contagion. Children pick up our emotions. Just like if your friend is very happy, you just naturally feel more happy talking to your friend. When your friend is very sad, you pick this up. It's like a flu that gets transmitted. Okay? If a parent is continuously exhausted, continuously frustrated, or depressed, or things like this, it does transfer to children, and research shows this. So, to be a good parent, you actually have to look after your own health as well. What does that mean? You must also get enough sleep. You must also be getting exercise and have healthy friendships. I also recommend, for example, meditation. Here's another difficult one. Parents who have a healthy relationship with each other, their children are going to grow up healthier. So even if divorce is necessary, it is better not to be waging war in front of children. And so research shows that children that grow up in homes with very high conflict are far more likely right throughout their life to have feelings of loss, anger, and regret their entire lives. And role modeling values. So if you do meaningful things in society, it's likely your children will follow. If you teach your children what is meaningful for you, it's likely they're going to copy you. So you cannot expect, none of us can expect that our children don't see how we are living or how we are behaving. Okay? So that's, of course, if we come home, we drink every night, if we drink excessively, this is naturally going to be what our children see. Doesn't matter what we say with words, it's what they're going to see. Okay, I'm just, in terms of time, going to just mention the last few points that we learn. It's very important for kids to learn social skills. Now, this is important as well in this age of continual texting of kids and just continually having relationships that are not necessarily face-to-face human relationships. So what research has shown, so there's a study from Duke University and Penn State University, is if you take preschoolers and they're actually interacting with other kids and they're learning how to be with other kids in good times, bad times, etc., they're far more likely to end up studying, being successful, getting a good job, and having a healthy family life themselves than if you keep them away from other kids and they don't learn social skills. And so what this research shows is that the kids who don't have these social skills have a far higher chance of getting arrested, binge drinking, etc. Now think of this with cyber activity. This is a very, very common thing. What we see here, you'll have a bunch of kids in a room, not one is actually using their mouth. This is also an important study. Many studies showing that if you teach kids, again, remember the brain is forming from a very young age. If we start to teach mathematical concepts from an early age, a 35,000 person study of preschoolers shows that if you teach kids maths very early on, it's going to help them not only with mathematics, but also with language skills. I was hoping to have time to talk about how to help your children choose subjects at school, how to choose their careers. There isn't time to talk about that, but what I do want to say is be smart about it, because we know that AI is going to remove many, many types of careers. So it is important to think what types of jobs are going to be totally disrupted, which are not going to be totally disrupted. But it comes back again to listening. If you really listen to your child, then you're going to start to think, what is my child uniquely talented at? What are they good at? And if you encourage your child to follow their passions, then again, research shows that they're far more likely to be happy in their lives than if you force them down a certain path just because they're going to pay the bills and get money, than if they actually follow something that is a natural passion for them. So a child's brain is like a supercomputer. And literally, they're like sponges. When a child is like 1, 2, 3 years old, you know that a child at 4 months can distinguish the sounds of 800 different languages. It's actually good to be speaking 2 languages at home to your child. Maybe you're talking Czech and English. This actually helps the child develop cognitive functioning. I'm a great passionate advocate of meditation. This is a book I strongly recommend you could read called Transcendence. It's a New York Times bestseller. Develops self-esteem inside the child, internal locus of control, 75% reduction in substance abuse, 50% reduction in serious illnesses, develops IQ, etc. Why is this important? In an age where kids are growing up on Facebook, on Twitter, whatever they're growing up on, it's very, very important that they learn a sense of self. The world is changing so quickly. It's very important that they have a sense of self-esteem. This is why it's important to teach a child how to connect to themselves. A recent Harvard study that came out shows that literally in just 8 weeks through meditating, you can fundamentally regrow brain matter. Gray matter in the brain. It's a very recent study from Harvard. So just in conclusion, the last few points I want to make is when we think about how we interact our children with the world of technology, it's very important that we teach them the side of creativity, not just consumerism. So if we think, why is there just a few people in the world who've made so much money creating these incredible platforms, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, etc.? These are the creators in the world. Everybody else is the consumers of those platforms. Okay? There's 50 billion connected devices in the world, but less than 1% of human beings know how to program or how to change what those devices can do. So with technology, let's try to teach our children how to be creators using technology and not just consumers of other people's videos, other people's this, other people's games, everything else, but how can they create them? Coding, and there's a lot of research coming out now that teaching your child to code is actually an incredible discipline. It teaches them logic skills. It teaches them maths and language skills. It teaches them problem solving. It teaches them persistence and perseverance. So this is a very, very valuable thing even to bring in school systems from a young age, is teaching children about coding, not because it's just where the world's going, but because it's naturally teaching children how to think, how to sequence things, and how to persevere. So lastly, when everything else fails, what we've got to remember that the most important thing is love. Okay? All of us need love at every single age to thrive. In whatever name you want to use for love or caring or whatever it is, as a human species, we need this. It's very different to AI. Everybody's just pushing all the time, pushing and pushing and pushing for tech and more tech at our fingertips. And we just have to think, it's a beautiful thing that can make life better, but it shouldn't seduce us, because just remember those skills we need: creativity, communication, problem solving, human interaction. These skills are created in the early years of life through play, being in a loving environment. So we need to be careful where we're putting our faith and make sure that there's balance. It's very good to learn coding. It's very good to engage kids in the tech world. But let's teach them how to create beautiful things in the world, to have great visions, to have high expectations. So in conclusion, when it comes to parenting, let's not give away our power as human beings, okay? And dehumanize the beauty of what it means to be human. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.